Hi everyone, Assalamu alaikum. Welcome on this workshop about the five wounds of the soul, or emotional wounds, also called sometimes. I wanted to share this amazing discovery that I've made about these wounds. Before I start, I want to add a little disclaimer. I want to recognize Salima Derer, which is my friend in France. I discovered this word from her. So if you speak French and if you need any kind of psychological help or boost or whatever, feel free to reach out to her. She's so great. She really helped me in many, many ways. And I want to give her back the credit of me discovering these wounds. Before I start, I wanted to share that with you. If you never heal from what hurt you, you will bleed on people who didn't cut you. And that sentence will make more sense once you know the wounds and once you know maybe which wound you have. Because if you didn't heal, basically one thing, one word from a beloved one might trigger a lot of things, and you will literally like vomit all your anger, your sadness, your resentment, or whatever on them, but they didn't do anything to you. That's just they triggered something. So the problem is within you, not within them. And that's why we really need to heal. So first, just you need to understand that we all wear a mask, sometimes even several masks. And according to Liz Bourbeau, the author of the book Heal Your Wounds and Find Your True Self, there are five major wounds that we face on a daily basis. The wounds of rejection, abandonment, humiliation, betrayal, and injustice. When one of these injuries is activated, we adopt a mask, that is to say, a behavior that does not really correspond to who we are or what we would do in a normal situation. The masks are visible in the morphology of the person. The body is so intelligent that it always finds a way to let us know where our suffering is and what we need to improve. The body is the only language that does not lie with the look. In the case of several injuries, the body will first express the predominant injury on the psychic level. The body will therefore have an overall morphology associated with the main injury while allowing a glimpse to a lesser extent of the other injuries in more localized parts of the body. The most eye-catching injury is the one that the person suffers most often and in greatest intensity. By reading the summaries that follow for each mask, you can easily determine which one or which ones you are wearing. The first mask is the fleeing mask. So we wear the fleeing mask when we have the wounds of rejection. Rejection is a very deep wound because people who suffer from it feel rejected in their being and especially in their right to exist. The origin is that the injury was experienced with the same-sex parent between the moment of conception and the age of 1 year. So obviously you have no recollection of that. Morphology. So this mask is easily recognized by a fleeing physique, that is to say a body or part of the body which seems to want to disappear or to be made very small, as if the fleeing wanted to go unnoticed for fear of being rejected. It is a dry, thread-like, and contracted body. We can have the impression that there is almost no flesh between the skin and the bones. The behavior. The fleeing person is a person who doubts his right to exist. He seeks solitude because if he received a lot of attention, he would be afraid of not knowing what to do. The fleeing prefers not to get attached to material things because they would prevent him from fleeing. He wonders what he's doing on this planet, and he can hardly believe that he could be happy here and bring something to this world. When he gets too much attention, he will lose its means. Relationships with others. This person who suffers from rejection is constantly seeking the love of the same-sex parent or transferring his quest to people of the same sex. With the parent or people of the opposite sex, he will rather tend to reject himself, to feel at fault if the other rejected him. He usually speaks little in a group. He is afraid of disturbing and not being interesting. He often lives in ambivalence. When he is chosen, he does not believe in him and rejects himself to end up sometimes sabotaging the situation which values him. And when he is not selected, he feels rejected by others. His vocabulary would be words like non-existent, null, nothing, disappear. And his biggest fear would be panic. Rejection won't activate from the moment of conception until the first year of life in relation to a child who felt rejected by a parent of same sex. As a result, he doesn't believe in his right to exist. And the ego's reaction would be to putting on a withdrawn mask, and you can see that manifesting through dissatisfaction with you are, assessing yourself as a meaningless person, lack of self-respect, considering yourself a family freak, defending yourself by refusal, anxiety, not paying attention to material matters in favor of the world of intellect, escaping into alcohol, drugs, sudden trips, virtual games, which imagination, taciturn, withdrawal, isolation leading to loneliness, hunkering in the material world through a sense of being busy, and perfectionism. So if you are in this case, and if you know anyone in your family, in your friend that has that wound, how can you help them? So we can forgive ourselves what we did, and giving ourselves the right to make mistakes, recognizing our own qualities and assuming our flaws, assuming our weaknesses and vulnerability, transforming that into a strength, accepting we can't please everyone and that others have the right to not love us, giving ourselves value, importance, and consideration without the fear of arrogance or selfishness, forgiving others their attitude of rejection, forgiving their way of giving themselves importance, and stop escaping the fear of rejection and tackling the situation of rejection and panic. So your motto, if it's your main one, your motto should be, do we really need the validation of others to have the right to live? Second mask is the addict mask, that the one that would be that people who have the wound of abandonment would wear. The wound experienced in the case of abandonment is the second deepest after that of rejection because they both affect the being. The origin, that's an injury experienced with the parent of the opposite sex between 1 and 3. Morphology, so the addict's body lacks tone, long, slender body with a rounded, sagging back, as if the spine and muscle were unable to keep the body upright. The addict's body seems to need help holding up and behavior. Those who suffer from abandonment do not feel emotionally nourished enough. They are in constant need of help and support. The addict thinks he can't do all by himself and he needs someone to support him regularly. He often has ups and downs. For a while he is happy and everything is fine, and suddenly he feels unhappy and sad. He is a person who dramatizes a lot. The smallest incident takes on gigantic proportions, and in a group, he likes to talk about himself and often brings everything back to him. Relationships with others. The addict usually requests the opinion or approval of others before deciding. He doesn't make up his mind, or he doubts his decision when he doesn't feel supported by someone else. And when he does something for someone, he does it with the expectation of a return of affection. The addict is the one of the 5 wounds who is most likely to become a victim in the dramatic triangle of Kaufman. His problem brings him the gift of attention, and it keeps him from being abandoned. The more a patient acts as a victim, the more their abandonment injury increases. And their vocabulary would be like absent, alone, I can't stand, I'm being eaten, I gave up. And their biggest fear is loneliness. So that wound, abandonment, activate between the first and third year of life in a relationship with a parent of the opposite sex due to the lack of parental support on the emotional plane, lack of attentive attention. The ego's reaction would be putting on a dependent mask, which manifests itself through problems with independent functioning and fear of loneliness, suffering from sadness without knowing its cause, crying alone sometimes for long hours, developing the victim's attitude, believing in bad luck, causing dramas, diseases in order to arouse pity for others, merging with others by entering into their emotion and suffering to attract attention, celebrity behavior, constantly talking about yourself, problems with making decisions and acting independently, picking on others, not listening to the advice of others, changeable moods, problems ending relationships, sinking into itself as a small scared child in the presence of an angry or aggressive person. So how can you help yourself or someone with that one? We can help ourselves, giving ourselves the right to abandon and accepting being abandoned, forgiving others and ourselves, abandonment, giving ourselves attention and not looking for it from others, challenging ourselves, tackling tricky situation, being convinced that we will always be supported whatever the situation, feeling good even if we are alone. And our motto should be, do we really need external support and help to reach our objectives? Next one is the masochist mask, which is for the wound of humiliation. The injury is mainly related to the physical world, that of having and doing. So its origin. It awakens during the development of physical body function, eating alone, being clean, going to the bathroom alone, talking, listening, understanding conversation, sexuality, etc. It is generally experienced with the mother or with the person in charge of learning the physical and sexual function mentioned above. So his morphology would be like a large body, plump, round face, large bulging neck, bison hump in the upper back. The masochist is frequently ashamed of himself and others or afraid of being ashamed. He thinks he is dirty, messy. He does not want to recognize and assume his sensuality as well as his love of the pleasure associated with the senses. That's why he compensates and rewards himself with food. And he grows easily to give himself a reason not to enjoy his senses. He is also afraid of being punished if he enjoys life too much. Thus, he gags his freedom by putting the needs of others before his own so as not to enjoy life. Relationship with others. The masochist seems to want to do everything for others. In reality, he wants to create constraints and obligation in order not to enjoy his freedom. It also reinforces this feeling of being abused and humiliated. And in the same way, it tends to lower and humiliate others by making them feel that they cannot do it alone without him. The masochist is often inclined to blame himself for everything and even take the blame for others. Masochistic people are also very sexual. They would often make love if they allowed themselves the pleasure of the senses, but often they dare not tell their partner about it for fear of being ashamed or of wanting it so often. Their vocabulary would be dignified, unworthy, small, fat, pig, dirty. And their biggest fear is freedom. So, humiliation won't activate between the first and third year of life in a relationship with a parent who was exulting in all kind of physical and sensual pleasure, causing shame in a child. The ego's reaction putting on a masochist mask manifested by the impression of being constantly observed and embedded, doing everything to be worthy in the eyes of God or those he loves, serving everyone you love with strength inward, the tendency to justify others, reluctance to admit to your own sensuality, suppressing your sensual drive, fear of punishment for the excessive joy of life, putting the needs of others above your own, feeling feeling often sloppy, dirty, and unworthy, compensate for different need with food. It's easy to get fat then. A talent for making people laugh, but often by mocking or humiliating himself. How can we help ourselves if we have that wound of humiliation? Recognizing how much we were ashamed of ourselves and of others without hiding it, listening to our own needs before helping others, understanding that they don't need to take so much space in people's life to be loved, not humiliating them, doing everything for them, not treating them like a child, realizing how much we belittle ourselves or we make ourselves feel unworthy without valid reason, recognizing our own value, giving ourselves the right to be worthy of happiness, giving ourselves the right to experience pleasure without feeling guilty, forgiving others and ourselves in order to love ourselves. And the motto for the wound of humiliation is, do we really need to please to live? Next one is the controller mask. That's for the wound of betrayal. The controller's wound, betrayal, is intimately linked to the addict's wound, abandonment. While abandonment is about being, betrayal is about having and doing. Origin lived with the parent of the opposite sex between the ages of 2 and 4 at the time when sexual energy develops, generating the Oedipus complex. Morphology, so their body exhibits strength and power. In men, we will see shoulders wider than the lower body, and in women, lower body would be wider than the shoulders, like pear-shaped body. The greater the asymmetry between the upper and lower body, the greater the betrayal injury. The behavior, very uncompromising. The controller wants to show others what he is capable of. He often interrupts and responds before the other party has finished. When things don't go quickly enough for his liking, he experiences anger. He considers himself hardworking and responsible. He has difficulty with laziness. The controller hates to be trusted. He does not always keep his commitment and promises or forces himself to keep them. He is impatient and intolerant, and he confides with difficulty and does not show his vulnerability. Relationship with others. The controller has great difficulty in accepting the cowardice of others. He has difficulty delegating tasks while trusting others. Among the 5 ones, the controlling is the one who has the most expectation of the others because he likes to foresee and control everything. Unlike the addict who has expectation of others because he wants to be loved and supported in his abandonment injury, the expectation of the controller are to verify that others are doing what they need to do in order to check if he can trust them. He strongly affirms what he believes and expects others to agree with his belief. He tends to assert his point of view categorically and seeks at all costs to convince others. He thinks that when someone understands it, he agrees with it, which unfortunately it's not always the case. And his vocabulary would be like, I'm capable, let me do it alone, trust me, I don't trust him. Did you understand? And the greater fear is disengagement, separation, dissociation, denial. So betrayal wound occurs between the 2nd and 4th years of life in a relationship with a parent of the opposite sex due to the parent's attention not adequate to the child's expectation, and also a loss of trust in a parent due to unfulfilled promises, lies, or sign of weakness. So the ego reaction, putting on a control mask by Imposing your will and point of view on others, no contact with your own sensitivity, demonstrating your own strength, a constant need to improve, striving for honors, title, the need to be special and important, attaching importance to reputation, lack of tolerance for the lies of others but lying alone, high expectation of others, applying rigor, manipulation, and control, strong need for all planning and a lack of flexibility in relation to unforeseen situation, lack of trust in the opposite sex, problems with discovering and confiding to others, too quick conclusions, quick reasoning and action, a tendency to offend, suddenly ending relationship and cutting off contact, lack of tolerance and impatience. How can we help ourselves and help people who have this wound of betrayal? Giving ourselves the right to disengage and accept disengagement, giving others the right and the freedom to disengage, forgiving others and ourselves the fact of being betrayed or to betray, being convinced that we are strong, courageous, and responsible without being willing to show it to others at any cost, allowing ourselves to make mistakes and accepting our vulnerability. We can't control or master everything. And our motto should be, would we let a fear control our lives? And last one, number 5, the rigid mask, which is for the wound of injustice. The wound of the rigid injustice is intimately linked to the injury of the fleeing person, rejection. While rejection touches deeply on being, the wound of injustice touches on having and doing. The origin, it's an injury experienced with the same-sex parent between the ages of about 4 and 6, when the child becomes aware that he is a separate entity with its differences. Morphology, straight, rigid body, and as perfect as possible. Well-proportioned, small size tightened by a garment or a belt. Rigid movement, stiff neck, white of pride. Behavior. The rigid is a living person with dynamic movement, but who are rigid and lacks flexibility. He is a perfectionist and biased. He cut himself off from his feeling and often crosses his arms. He seeks to be perfect and justify himself very much. He finds it difficult to admit that he is having problems. He often doubts his choices. He lacks order and tends to control himself by demanding a lot from himself. He can be short-tempered and cold and has trouble showing affection. The rigid does not like being late, but he will often be because it takes a long time to prepare. He himself misses the point because he tends to exaggerate things by using the words never, always, very. Relationship with others. When he is moved, the rigid does not want to show it, but we can see it in his tone of voice, which becomes dry and stiff. The rigid likes that those who open it are aware of everything he has done and all that is involved. Unlike the controller who acts in the same way to show that he's responsible, the rigid acts thus to prove that he deserves a reward. The rigid finds it difficult to receive the gift because he then feels indebted. And his vocabulary would be like, no problem, always, never, very good, rightly, exactly, agree. And his biggest fear is coldness. So the injustice wound occurs between the age of 4 and 6 in relation to same-sex parent in children who have experienced parental dryness. The ego's reaction, putting on a harsh mask, manifested by showing your vitality despite being tired, difficulties in admitting to experiences problem, constant optimism, controlling yourself to always be perfect, fear of losing control, unaware of your own injustice towards others, problems showing feelings, problems creating a satisfying intimate relationship, very high demand on your body, such as not acknowledging your illness, great acceptance of pain and cold, auto-temper, a tendency to criticize others and yourself, putting skills above feelings. How can we help people or ourselves with the wounds of injustice? acknowledging our wound, accepting it, and forgiving ourselves and others. Being in peace with authority, recognizing that we sometimes are unfair and allowing us to be so, allowing ourselves to make mistakes and being indulgent towards ourselves and others, allowing ourselves to have and express emotions and feelings. And our motto should be, do we really need to be perfect to give ourselves the right to enjoy life and pleasure? So, as a summary, when you have the wound of rejection, you wear the mask of receding, your panic will be fear, and the traps for your ego would be convinces himself that he cares for himself and others, not to feel the rejections lived. If you have the wound of abandonment, you will wear the mask of dependent, fear, solitude, and likes to do freelance, like to say that he feels good alone and does not need anyone. If you have the wound of humiliation, you wear the mask of masochistic, your fear is freedom, and he convinces himself that everything he does for others makes him very happy and listens to his needs by doing so. If the wound is treason, he will wear the mask of controlling, and the fear would be denial. He will convince himself that he never lies, that he always keeps his word, promises, and that no one scares him. And if the main wound is injustice, the mask is rigid and the fear is coldness. Likes to say how good he is, that his life is no problem, and how many friends love him and as he is. So how do wounds get activated? Every day you go from one wound to another depending on the circumstances and people around you. The wound can be activated by somebody's attitude or behavior towards you. It could be also activated by your attitude towards someone else. You can also activate it yourself by your attitude towards yourself. How can we heal our wound? You must become aware of the wound and accept it. Observe your wound instead of letting the ego mask dominate. Accept the thought that the fear that is guided by your ego affects your perception of reality and reactions in a given situation. Watch the pain and let yourself be only human. So, how to do it? So when you have the wound of rejection, feel good in your skin, even though someone forgets about your existence. For the wounds of abandonment, feel good even though you are alone and do not seek someone's attention. If you have the wound of humiliation, ask without feeling disturbed. Check your needs before you commit yourself to others. If you have the wound of betrayal, feel proud of your achievements, although no one else appreciates it. Don't get attached to results and don't want to be in the spotlight. If you have the wound of injustice, allow yourself to be less perfect, indulge in sensitivity, anger without guilt, and fear of judgment. To recognize your wound, it is also helpful to remember that we do not accept in others what we do not want to see in ourselves. So we do so for fear of change. That's why we always try to change the people around us. Meanwhile, nobody in your life is to meet your expectation. They come from a lack of self-love. You should also forgive those who have activated this wound in you. Tie it to your parent, forgive him and yourself for having it. And remember, if you never heal from what hurt you, you will bleed on people who didn't cut you. So if you are ready to take off your mask and heal, I want to share my journey. So what I did in 2018, I started to change my nutrition. So basically I fixed my body. So that would be the first and easiest step. Easy because you can actually kind of control what you put or not put in your mouth. That's easiest, but absolutely necessary to move on. Can't have a clear mind with an unhealthy gut. And that's basically why we created that program. That first part would be the body with me. And in that part about the body, it will be 4 weeks about nutrition, hormones, exercise. So we will learn what is balance, not only what is healthy, but what is balance, what the body and what our body needs, because we don't all have the same needs, how to rebalance our hormones, how to exercise, and what exercise is adapted to our situation. And that will have a big impact on stress as well. Then once you kind of manage your nutrition, you can move to your mind. Once the gut is clear, the brain receives accurate messages and will trigger the right hormones. That's the time to learn how to control, direct your emotion and stop suppressing them. And that's where Sister Yasmin take people for 4 weeks through mindfulness, meditation, and controlling their thoughts. And then the third step would be the soul, the most painful step, but also the most impactful. Managing the pain, emotions, feelings will be much easier. The mindfulness techniques will help to stay in control and not feel overwhelmed. Basically, in a nutshell, if you had a very traumatic childhood, for example, if you don't control your thoughts, if you don't control your food and the way you eat and the way you escape reality from with food, or the way you deprive yourself from eating sometimes, once you start thinking of that trauma, for example, it will activate so much things that it will have a big impact on your nutrition. But if you know how to manage your nutrition, how to control your thoughts, then you can heal your wound. And that's exactly why I created this with these two sisters, Vatco. Because what happened to me is I changed my nutrition 2018. I started to have so much energy, no more mood swing, cravings, slumps, brain fogs, or this kind of thing. But then I had so much energy that my brain was jumping like flea, basically from one idea to another. I felt like a laptop with 20 windows open. I couldn't focus on one. And that's when Sister Yasmin started to help me to control the thought. And since I started this course, the course with Sister Yasmin, how to control my thoughts, I've never had the problem of being focused in Salah, for example. It never happened to me anymore to not know which raka I am. It never happened anymore. And that's only after that step that I worked with Sister Sana about my soul. It's 2-3 years ago, she offered to help me, but I think I was not ready. I didn't start anything with her. I think it was too early for me. But then a lot of things happened to me. My older son in France, age 28, went through 2 cancers, so it did wake up a lot of things in me. I have 4 little ones between 5 and 11, and I knew I never wanted to be the same mom, but still it put something in my body that I couldn't put. As I always say, I had wounds and I did put some plasters on the wounds, but it was I had, we can say, so much pus that I reached a point where I had to remove the plasters, and I had to literally clean and heal. And that's what I did with Sister Sana. And I really healed a lot, because I have some tests that I can share to identify which one is the most important that you have. And when I did this test, if I did that test like 3 years ago, I would have scored a lot more in most of the ones. And now I healed a lot. And I knew I healed because if I were to talk about some very traumatic experiences I had in the childhood, I wouldn't even cry. I wouldn't feel in the emotion. It's like I would tell a film that I saw in TV, but that's not my life. It doesn't trigger anymore all the feeling it triggered when I lived or when I experienced that. And I really feel like that one. The black sheep of the family is the ones who become the self-healer, who breaks their generational curses, guilt, shame, heals their ancestral spirits, and start their own lineage. And for me, it's so important to break that cycle. I had a very unhappy dad, very unhappy mom, and obviously when they are unhappy, they are not great parents either. And I started to do exactly the same with my older one, and that's why I decided to change. And wouldn't it be great to go through those 3 transformations, one after the other, with a coach holding your hand all the way? And that's why we created that program, Holistic Body Reboot program, where you will go through 3 phases, the body, mind, and soul, all linked together. So you have the link here, committofit.uk/register to program. You can have a look at all the things that you can expect from this kind of program, and feel free to register for the next one that will start. See you, everyone, and if you have any question, reach out to me. That would be my pleasure to answer to everyone.